Hi, I'm Breanna and I'm with Floral Reef Designs. Thank you for joining me today to make a Thanksgiving or fall centerpiece. Today we're going to be making one without floral foam. You'll see a lot of people in the floral industry are going away from it just because it's not environmentally friendly and it's just not a sustainable option. It's also not great for people to ingest some of the bits of it as well. So what I've done is this container just has it kind of what we call a couple layers of chicken wire, and then I just have some floral tape across to hold it in. And what that's going to do is it creates a grid to hold all the stems in, and then from there it's almost like foam in that regard that it keeps your stems where you want them to go. When you're first doing it, the first few stems, you'll notice they may move a little bit, but as we add more in, they'll stick where they are as it creates kind of a framework. So what we're going to do first is start with some greenery. I have a few different kinds today. This one is magnolia leaves. And so what we need to make sure we do each time is take off any leaves. You don't want them to go in the water. And then you're going to want to cut it on an angle and then put it in the vase. So what I'm doing today is we're going to make a kind of more asymmetrical or long centerpiece as opposed to round. So what we're going to want to do is put the pieces in on a few different angles. And you'll see they're basically staying in where I've put them. And again, I'm always taking the leaves off and then giving them a fresh cut and putting them in. See, I didn't like where that first stem was, so I'm going to put this bigger one in to take its place. And then I'll reinsert this one. If you're putting it right back in, you don't need to give it a cut. And it's different than floral foam in the way that you don't have to worry about it eating up all of your surface area and making it so you can't put flower stems in different spots later. So that was just a little bit of the magnolia for the first greenery. And then I'm going to add in this one here. It's called Italian Ruscus. It's a really nice line one, and you can see it's a different color, so it adds a different texture to the arrangement. And then also I'm going to put it so it's almost dragging down the sides a little bit to cover up the side of the container. We're going to do the same thing. You need to take off the leaves and put it into the water. And you can see the chicken wire is just holding it exactly where we've put it in, and it's getting water the whole time as well. So I'm just going to continue to put a few stems of that in along the sides and then a few pieces up into the middle as well, but I'm going to make it so it's got a little bit coming out the edges so you can see that nice soft texture of it. And a good thing to do as you're going along, I haven't done it yet, but I will after I do this greenery, this piece here, is to keep turning your arrangement around so you can see all sides. If you're just doing a one-sided arrangement, you don't have to do that. But since we're doing it with the idea it's going to be a centerpiece, then you want all sides to look good. So we'll just give it a little twist here. And I'll see that, okay, I want a little bit more of the Italian Ruscus on this side. There's a little bit of a bare spot. I want to have a little bit more of that nice green. All right. And this piece here is a shade long for what I want to do today. So we're going to take it out and then I'm going to just cut it off. All right, the next one I'm going to use is called smoke bush. So it's a nice kind of brownish red color. And I find this one is really beautiful in the fall, but it almost becomes like a flower on its own, bringing another color and presence in the arrangement, just kind of like the magnolia did. Right, and I'm going to turn it again to see the other side. And there's definitely a spot at the front here where we need a little bit of this. All right. And then I also have Floral, which I'm just going to put in low to cover up some of the areas where there's bigger gaps, because it's not, I don't find it as aesthetically pleasing of a greenery, but it's a nice filler, and it's, again, another color to create more visual interest. And you can put them down along the edges as well. All right. And the last one I have, I actually just clipped from the yard here, which is something you can do a lot. You'll have a lot of greenery at home, like different trees or bushes you might have even into the fall that are great. This one in particular still has flowers, but I'm just going to use it mainly for the greenery. So we're just going to put it in throughout to bring this different leaf shape. And then also it is, because it has flowers, going to bring in some of that nice kind of pinky red color. But it's great to kind of forage, ideally on your own property. If you're going on someone else's, make sure you ask for permission, obviously. You don't want to take something they want to keep, kind of thing. All right, so this one's just going in throughout. I would like it to be a bit taller because it's a bit more dainty up through the sides. All right, so now we're done with what I'm going to do for the greens. Actually, I'll just put this piece in just to use it. I want a little bit of that nice greenery up to the top. You can see a lot of this is already covered with the greenery. So now we have all these beautiful flowers to add in. So what we're going to do is start with what I would call, in this case, is my focal flower. So it is a dahlia. And what you want to think about when you have a focal flower is that you space them apart and they're on different planes, and that also kind of from every angle of the arrangement, you can see at least part of this focal flower. So I'm going to put one on this side over here, and I'm just going to kind of put it lower to the container. And then there's also buds, which I personally love to use because sometimes they'll open, and if not, they're just beautiful texture. So I'll just show you. I have that one in kind of low. The next one I'm going to put in, it's going to be kind of more up to the top here. And then the third one is going to be on the other side, again, a shade lower as well, just so it's kind of spread out throughout. So there we go. You can see that one's in there as well. Then I'm going to put the third in on this side. And it'll be up a little bit more than the first one I put in as well. So I'll just turn it so you can see. You can kind of see as I'm turning it from each angle, you should be able to see at least a portion of this beautiful focal flower, which in this case, as I said, is a dahlia. Oh, and I have a nice bud here. So actually this one's really nice and tall. So I'm going to put it up in the top, just kind of floating above everything else. All right. The next one I'm going to do are these nice orange roses. I would kind of call this, they can sometimes be a focal flower, but in this case they are what I'm going to use as my kind of secondary flower. So they're going to kind of go in between where we have the main focal flowers. They can, yeah, basically in between. I'm going to be using 5. So you kind of go on, not a triangle, but almost a zigzag pattern throughout. And with these, I was just taking the petals off the outside. They're called guard petals. A lot of the time, if you buy roses from a florist, they'll already have them off. In this case, I haven't taken them off. And then we're just going to, again, always cut on an angle and stick it in. You'll find for the first little bit, it's hard to kind of figure out how tall to cut it, but especially with the chicken wire, it's very forgiving. If it's too tall and not where you want it, you just take it out and cut some more off. It's always better to err on the side of not taking enough off so you don't have a stem that's not long enough and it's too short. All right, again, taking off the greenery. You don't want it to go into the container. The greenery, if it's in the container with the water, will start to rot, and it will definitely decrease the length of time that your arrangement's going to last. So I have 2 of the 5 roses in. So far you can see one's kind of lower, the next one's taller, a little bit more on an angle. The next one I'm going to kind of put in over here, and then I'll put 2 more on this side so you'll see as well as we're going along. The big thing is to kind of look at it as a whole and see where, especially when you're using different colors, you want each color to be spread throughout the arrangement so it's not like one big cluster of the orange for this type. So your eye, the idea is you make it so your eye just continually wants to keep moving around with the movement of the flowers. Sometimes you might run into a time where it's kind of harder to get the stem into where you're planting, just because as we add more stems, obviously we're running out of space. So just kind of put it up a little bit, or a little bit, like move it upwards a little bit or downwards a little bit, and sometimes you'll be able to get it in just from there. So I'll just turn it again. I have all my roses in. You can see they're all kind of on different planes and throughout, so you can kind of, again, like the focal flowers, you want to see at least one from each side. The next flower I have is sedum. So it's kind of like what we'd call an accent flower. There's not necessarily a set number of stems you'd put in it, but it's just, again, to go throughout the arrangement and fill it in. This one I would usually put a little bit lower than the focal flowers. You'll still get the impact of the color, but then it's not going to be the prominent thing that your eye is looking at. So I'll just put a couple stems in and turn it around so you can see. So there I have 3 of them in so far. And then the other 2 that I have, I'm going to put them in similarly, where they're kind of lower, but they're still not low enough in that you're losing them in the greenery, but they're not the thing that's you're seeing before you look at the focal flowers. All right, and the other 2 are a bit smaller, but they still work well. This dahlia, I'm just going to angle a little bit more that way. And as you go, you might find some things aren't quite where you want them. Usually there's a bit of space that you can kind of wiggle them and put them on a different angle. The last one we're using for today is called Helenium. So this is what I would call more of a smaller accent flower. Each of these stems, when you look at them, have kind of individual smaller branching stems that you'll be able to take off and tuck in spots in the arrangement. Another ones that you might use at this time of year are like fall mums. They have the same kind of branching style where you'll be able to take some of them off, and then eventually at the top the stems will be too small that you can't break them off to put them in an arrangement like this, but then you can use the whole stem as its own like little cluster of flowers. So I'll show you how to do that. So I kind of have 2 that don't have long enough shoots to do that with, and then 2 that do. So what I'm going to do is just pull off all the offshoots that are longer. These first ones were just greenery, so we'll just throw them out. I'm not going to use them. You'll see like that one will be long enough to use. And these next 3. This one too, it's on the smaller side, but I do appreciate some of them being a bit lower there. And then you can see this one, it's kind of a cluster of smaller ones at the middle, and then we've kind of created its own stem as well. So I'm just going to break up the other ones so I have them all ready to go and put them in the arrangement. For these ones, basically what we're doing is filling in any gaps you see, and considering these are a different color, I'm adding in the yellow, which isn't there already. You'll want to make sure that you distribute them throughout the arrangement again, so they're not all on one side and then the other side has no yellow. I mean, if you really like that look, I guess you could do it, but it's not necessarily the right way to do it for the style we're going for today. All right. what I'm going to do is I have two of these that definitely have a little bit more red on them, and these happen to be the ones that are just the larger stems as a whole that I can use. So I'm going to use them first and stick them into a spot where I see has a bigger gap. So for instance, right here, there's not really any flower there, it's more greenery. So I'm going to stick that in there. And you can make them so they kind of dance above the other flowers, or you can tuck them in whatever way you want to do it. If you like more of an airy arrangement, I'd put them so they're kind of up throughout the other ones. Otherwise, you can kind of tuck them in amongst everything else. Let's just see here. Oh, there's a spot over here. I'm going to stick this one. And then I'm just going to work in all the rest of these throughout the arrangement. You'll see these have little leaves. You want to take those off because, again, if they're in the water, they'll rot and start to make your arrangement die a lot quicker than it needs to be. And looking through here, I also have a greenery. I'm not liking how tall it is in the end coming through here, so I'm gonna cut it again and just sink it back in, but just where it was, but just a little lower. Because I didn't want it to be the prominent thing coming out the side there. All right, I have a couple stems left, so I'm just going to keep turning it and see. There's definitely a couple spots on here that I think I need a little bit more, so we're going to put the last few bits on this side. Sometimes get pieces like this. It has little buds on it. Even this one, I like it. It's wispy, so I'm going to stick it up in the top again. Kind of near the other bud, actually. All right. I just have this last little guy here. All right. So that is using everything that I planned on today. What you can do is kind of go through and see if there's spots that you're not quite liking something, and you can, like I said, there's a little bit of forgiveness with the chicken wire that you can kind of move stuff around. But I'll just kind of twirl this for you as I'm looking at it so you can see it from each side. And like here, this rose is a bit higher than I want it to be. The final look is the kind of end stage to make sure you like where everything is. You can edit where need be. Sink things in a bit deeper, pull them out a little bit. If you're pulling them out, just make sure that they're still hitting the water line in the water, in the container. All right, so I'm going to take that off of here so you can see it. This is our arrangement today. So a lot of these, like the roses, will open up as time goes on, and it'll just be beautiful for a number of days. The key thing into keeping your arrangements lasting well is to make sure that they're not in direct sunlight, that they always have water. And then if the water starts to get murky or kind of cloudy, which is hard to see in a container like this, but really every couple of days it's good to change the water and give it a fresh water. And then no direct sunlight, and then also not at this time of year, not near heat vents, because the heat will help them die quicker as well too. Yeah, so that is our Thanksgiving centerpiece. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed this demo and you have a great Thanksgiving.